Your expected approach time 3-4, approach button 17, the altimeter 2997.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I hope this video finds you well wherever you're tuning in from today. I'm your host, Prickly Hedgehog, and it's time once again to dig into this week's newsletter from Eagle Dynamics with the Situation Report. We begin with good news for World War II fans who, like just about everything else in the game right now, has probably been overshadowed by the release of the Apache. The ED team are currently working on visual improvements to the external models and cockpits of the Thunderbolt, Anton, and Mosquito. The Mozzie is also receiving an updated set of level of details, or LODs, that will improve performance, which is exciting news. I do enjoy this airframe, but like everything else in DCS, sometimes finding time to delve into other modules that are not regularly flown can be challenging. Nonetheless, the team advised that bugs that were present in controls, rearm and refuel procedures, radio and intercom have now been crushed. You can expect these fixes in the next open beta update. Additionally, the Freya and Wurzburg radars have also received some more realistic behavior. There is a setup video available for those assets from Sunsag Ancient Gamer, which was in fact released back in February of this year. The Bedford and Blitz trucks, which are both free with DCS World, can now be used in FARP setups. They are also currently fine-tuning the new fuse systems for World War II bombs and containers. Rest assured, EDs say that more improvements to the Warbirds and the accompanying units will come in parallel with the continued development of the DCS Mosquito FB6. Again, this is good news, and perhaps significant, as there was a little ripple in the community from jabbers a few months ago who questioned, rather publicly, ED's focus on bug fixing and game improvements over the release of modules. It was a challenge, effectively, to ED's business model regarding resourcing. As an end user focused on specific modules, it's difficult to assess slack in a given area that intrudes upon my own gaming experience. For me, what ED does in terms of the general quality of the modules that I use, I assess as excellent. Of course, other players may have different experiences and assess things differently. I can understand frustration if the experience is hindered by bugs affecting that module. I won't go much more into this topic. Suffice to say that it requires more assessment for discussion in the first place, and of course any improvements to modules across the board is always going to be good for players. Pretty much all complex games from studios who have high expectations from their player bases experience criticism from time to time. It's a history or a part of the history of gaming, and it will also be a part of the future of gaming. I don't think it's going to change. Switching tacks here, ED plugged a couple of campaigns this week, including the widely praised Paradise Lost campaign from Reflected Simulations, which features the venerable Huey. It's a fictional campaign based in 1968 and provides a high level of detail and mission types for the chopper, set in the Marianas Islands. Reflected does some amazing work. I just don't know how he finds time to do the work he does, which is obvious on these campaigns. It's really fantastic. I need to sit down and talk with him at some stage about some of the work that he does. Similarly, another hardworking character is Baltic Dragon, and his campaign for the A10C2 Tank Killer was also plugged. This one is the A10C2 Iron Flag Part 1 campaign. Now this is a flow-on apparently from the Tank Killer Training Missions campaign, and will test your skills and knowledge from the previous campaign and get to put them into action. Being Baltic Dragon, of course, you can expect the usual quality, realism, and attention to detail. I'm kind of interested in the A10C2 again, as I've discovered that in training with the Air Warfare group, I'm actually not too bad at bombing things, The air-to-air stuff, though, that's really good at messing with my head and challenging me in a different way. Doing tactical turns and other geometry, while it's fun, it's really, really challenging because it happens pretty quick and pretty fast in high-performance jets. So maybe I'll get back into some of that low-level hell stuff. ED also plugged another multiplayer server known as Blue Flag 2.5. It provides a team-based PvP experience on the Persian Gulf, Syria, Caucasus, and Normandy maps through various World War II, 60s, 80s, and modern eras. This server features a live map for each scenario and extensive statistics and pilot logbooks. Check out more information at Buddy Spike Discord, also the Buddy Spike Wiki for more information. Blue Flag 2.5 apparently offers the first 24/7 persistent multiplayer PvP campaigns ever created in DCS World. Focus, of course, is on teamwork and cooperation to achieve victory through domination and capture of all of the objectives. So if that's something you're into, you may want to check that out. I should plug our own network too if you're looking for training and information. Do visit Tactical DCS on Discord for resources. If you're looking for ways to expand your flying knowledge in the game, you don't have to fly blind. This franchise does present some unique challenges because of the steep learning curve with very complex modules, and that's a good way of finding some resources to get into learning how to fly these aircraft. Remember that the pilots themselves don't just sit and read the manual and then go out and fly. There's a lot of training, a lot of coaching, and certainly some testing along the way, but it doesn't just come from osmosis or reading the manual. There's a lot of input that occurs from people to help them along the way. So, do take that into consideration as you get to grips with this franchise.
Yeah. All right, now I need you guys to drop a hose out so I can plug it.
Well, let's turn now to a little bit of a different tack again and come back to the campaign discussion. And I was going to do this as a separate video, but with the shorter newsletter this week and also the discussion about campaigns, I've been kicking around this question about the lack of a dynamic campaign in DCS World, and does it really matter? Many of you will be familiar with the concept of dynamic campaigns in combat flight simulators. Old stalwarts like Falcon BMS, for example, offered a non-linear campaign based on up to 6 different scenarios in the Korean Peninsula that allow you to fly as part of a small component of a much larger war theatre. In fact, the game is still around today, and it's still very, very popular for F-16 fans. Now, I recall fondly a similar system in Falcon 4 Allied Force, which was set in the European theatre as well as the Korean Peninsula, and much earlier than that we had DID's EF-2000, which also provided a rich playground where your actions could contribute to the success or failure of the campaign. So why don't we have one in DCS World, and does it really matter? Well, the simple answer to the first part of the question is simply that ED hasn't built one yet, or at least it hasn't finished work on the campaign it's been kind of toiling with for some time now, and it's simmering in the background, I guess, against much bigger projects. The reasons for that appear to be a little complicated and not completely transparent. Based on some discussions we've seen in the past, one issue appears to be the complexity of creating a manageable working system in DCS World, which requires a lot of programming to manage resources in a realistic way based on, as I said, prior discussions that we've seen from ED staff. One of the other challenges appears to be the breadth of assets needed to plug into the algorithms for resourcing purposes, what map asset it will use, plus the current functionality and development of the AI. While we do have a lot of assets in the game, the scale of material needed for what is likely going to be a modern era battle space is fairly extensive. There has been no discussion, as far as I know, of a similar World War II dynamic campaign, but if there's too much compromise in the theatre assets and resource management, it won't lend itself to the experience DCS players expect from a dynamic campaign based on what we've already seen in the genre so far. Obviously, this assessment is pretty broad and general in the absence of recent updates on the topic from Eagle Dynamics, so there's a certain amount of guesswork here. One of the other things I speculated on was perhaps the current software's interaction with modern PC hardware, which at this time is not fully exploiting multi-threading technology. As Matt Wagner indicated in a recent podcast regarding the Apache release, ED is still working on multi-core technology integration, but it's a massive task. What I suspect, simply put, is that the software-hardware meld that we have right now may not handle the data processing required to smoothly run very large-scale campaigns that you would expect from that kind of scenario. So to a greater or lesser degree, depending on the rig, that may affect gameplay. The other problem I suspect they're running into, based on snippets discussed by some of the linear campaign makers, is managing AI assets and getting them to behave in the way that they are supposed to based on the triggers and other scenarios in the game where interaction with human players occurs. In fairness, ED has been working very hard on this aspect of the game, and we are seeing much better behavior from the AI in situations such as dogfighting and also in formation flying, for example. It's still a work in progress, of course, and it's no small feat. In reality, we can never really replace a human player, but in the right circumstances, they do provide a good, immersive, and realistic experience. If you don't get it right, of course, that's going to frustrate gameplay. The last part of the question I'm posing is, does it really matter that there's no dynamic campaign? After all, the single-player mission sets within some of the third-party campaigns available for purchase right now are absolutely fantastic. They provide a level of immersion I think that would be hard to recreate in a grand campaign, given the voice acting, professional consultation from former aviators and some current, and of course a storyline to flow along with. As I mentioned recently, the quality of these campaigns, the breadth of scale and the variety has grown significantly over the last few years. Certainly, if you're a campaign designer, you're probably thinking, no, ED, take your time on the development of the dynamic campaign. The void is being filled by some quality work. Now, the benefit of the dynamic campaign is replayability and flexibility within the mission sets, the opportunity to try to beat the machine. In the previous examples I mentioned, the campaign was centered on just one aircraft type, and of course, ED has numerous aircraft to manage within the theater it generates. I mentioned before also the issues surrounding assets, which for aircraft on the Red Force side is somewhat limited as things currently stand. We're waiting for the release of the MiG-23 by Razbam, but the list of full-fidelity Russian-based aircraft is thin. Assets like the Phantom F-4 could assist in some map theaters, as they were used by Iran, for example, but that may not be suitable for realism in other conflict zones. On that basis, given some shortfalls in the grand campaign scheme, does it matter that we don't have a dynamic campaign in DCS World right now? I don't think it does. If you disagree, or if you think I'm right, let me know what you think about the topic in the comments section below, and maybe give some discussion points as to what resources we have out there, because I know for a fact that there are some user products out there that form pretty realistic looking campaigns as well that are free to download. If you have an idea of some good resources to plug into the game as things stand right now, or give us a link. If you have a product you want to plug, let me know and I'll do my best to do that for you as well. I think that brings us to the end of another DCS situation report this week. If you enjoyed the content today, don't forget to like and subscribe, and of course comment in the sections below, as you've already been invited to do several times. All of that feedback, all of that assistance really helps keep the channel chugging along. We'll leave it at that for now. This is Prickly Hedgehog out. We'll see you next time on another DCS situation report.
1-3, correction, range formation. So you also, you can follow in on Sabre 3 initials, reports and initials.